Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Blokes podcast. Ryan Hassan just back in white here, back after a bit of a hiatus. It's great to be here from the Centre for Healing, joined as always by Nick, the Sultan of Still, the Miracle of McRae, the Master of Mindfulness, Sutherland. Nico, how are you, mate?
I'm curious. I'm in a state of wonder.
What are you wondering?
I'm wondering if the ratings are going to plummet after today's episode, after they've just skyrocketed the last two episodes.
Oh, they have they? You've got the data and analytics to back that up?
I actually got called by Spotify and iTunes saying, "What's happened? What's the catalyst for this trend in the upward direction?"
Well, I was concerned the fact that you told our listeners that I was dead, yet nobody reached out to see if I was okay. But I don't know what offended me more. I don't know if I was more offended by you saying I was dead and that I offered nothing to the show, or just the offense at your pedestrian introduction to the podcast. It was a struggle to go. I nearly turned off our own show after 15 seconds from falling asleep. But anyway, good try though. Good try. Maybe just
and shit.
maybe second sidekick, second fiddle's probably your role, I'd say.
And shout out to Mitch for stepping in.
And shout out to Mitch for having my back too, because when you were ripping into me 2 episodes ago, Mitch was standing up for me. That's much appreciated, Mitch.
And I had stern words with him after the episode finished recording, and
Well, yeah, what did you say?
I said, "It's not how we do things here, buddy. So you're either on board or you're out."
That sounds like a toxic workplace for me.
It's very toxic. It's mindfully toxic though. Does that make it okay? I'm
Very
conscious.
toxic.
I'm conscious that I'm being toxic.
Oh my God, look how conscious he is. It's
That's
funny
today's
though.
topic too. That's
Uh,
today's topic.
Conscious, unconscious, it is. But I was listening to it, and it's funny how there's always a bit of a balance, I think, in everything in the universe. It's sometimes we get a misperception because we only perceive one side of it. And it's like, I know, let's say this is a parenting dynamic, and I'll notice that, I'm a little bit more of the sterner kind of one in a loving way, and Melissa's much softer. And then I notice that if Melissa starts getting sterner and everything, then all of a sudden I become softer just to try and
Hmm.
balance out the level. Have you noticed that in your life?
Ve- Very much so. In my relationship with them, I've M's a little bit more.
Be careful.
I'm being very careful. I'm actually going to start retreating out of this.
He's backing slowly in through the bushes.
Beep, 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 beep.
Maybe use a different example.
Yeah, I can't come up with another one, but yes, I've noticed the balance. Um, yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's fascinating to observe because we've spoken before about the pendulum always swinging and everything. You know, is constantly moving and ebbs and flows, and there is a natural correction because the whole universe, I think, just is all about balance. So when we go too far that way, there's who was it? Newton, one of his laws: every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So yeah, it just makes sense. It's science, man.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like whether it's maybe a relationship or a friendship that dissipates and we don't see them anymore, maybe someone passes away. It's like we perceive this loss. But then if we're conscious and looking for it, we'll notice that whatever we were, let's say, receiving, whatever energy was happening with that person, it starts to then show up in other forms. And it mightn't be like a one for one, like someone goes and someone comes back in, but maybe someone passes away who offered us all these things, then all of a sudden three or four people in our life who were kind of acquaintances or family members we saw a bit will all of a sudden kind of step up and start to fill that void. I
Mm.
remember John DeMartini does a lot of teaching on this, and he was saying when 9/11 happened, because this is like his philosophy is being able to see a balanced perspective of every moment. And he heard about when 9/11 happened, and he was in a plane, funnily enough, somewhere else in the world. And whilst everybody was grieving and seeing how horrible it was, he took out his pen and paper and started to write down what are the possible benefits of this happening. And I remember, I can't remember now, it was years ago, but in his book, he listed it was like 30 or 40 different things he came up
Mm.
with, and all the work that would be created through construction, all the solidarity and people who were fighting, who were American, then coming together. And he had all these reasons. And it's just so interesting that in any moment we can have a possibly more balanced perspective without neglecting the obviously the harsh reality.
Yeah, yeah. And my take on that with clients is there's no good or bad. You can't look at things as 9/11 was bad, or because there's a whole spectrum. It's that it's a tragedy, yes, but it's also the Holocaust, for example. I use that with Viktor Frankl's work, and on one level, it was a horrific tragedy, but so much has come from it. So it's that's really liberating, I think, and healthy, and has such a, I don't know, just a wonderful ripple effect through a person when they can reach that balanced perspective and oh, that's fucked. That's, oh, I can't believe that happened. That's such a destructive mentality. But I came up with a uh, instead of, I've backed right out of the M scenario, and I found
You
another
did
one.
very well there.
So
Good job.
thank you. I'm proud of myself. Um, because I was very conscious and present with what I was saying as I was saying it. So I was in a position to intervene and set boundaries for myself.
Very good.
Um, so, you spoke about filling the void because you do fuck all for the podcast. I fill the void a lot, and I have to sort of really come up with all the themes and all the topics and everything, and do all the sort of heavy lifting, I suppose. And yeah, and that's just a wonderful example of how we all make it work.
Yeah, thanks for that. Very, very, very well played. Very good. You backed out of the M situation and just went straight for me.
Well, I still
Um,
had a full tank of gas. I had to use it on someone.
okay, all right. I'm here for it.
I still had all these rounds in the chamber. I had to let it go.
Um, and so one thing I speak with clients, just shut up for a second, keep your rounds in your chamber. You can release them sporadically throughout the show as opposed to all at the
No, I'm
start.
done. I'm done.
You're done.
It's been
Okay.
a couple of it's been a
It's
couple.
been
I just
it's
have to
been
get it out
building
of the
up.
system. Yeah.
Had blue balls. Um, I was speaking about this with clients. The sometimes we go through situations and we're like, oh, this is the worst. This shouldn't be happening. I can't believe this is happening. This is going to be the end of me. And then, a year, 6 months, a year down the track, they can look back and go, oh my God, that was actually for my benefit. That was so good because I actually ended that job that I was in or that relationship. And now I've realized that I can go into bigger and better things. And I always tell clients, it's like, what if we can have that perspective and that attitude in the moment when, quote unquote, things are going terrible or something really catastrophic's
Mm.
happened? How can we instead go, well, I wonder, I acknowledge what I'm feeling right now, and I will acknowledge that, but also I wonder how this is working in my favor and of my benefit overall. What
No, the
door,
Stoics
what
have,
door might this be opening?
yeah. It's awesome. The Stoics were onto this 2,500 years ago, and that they came up with amor fati, a love of fate, love everything that happens. Aldous Huxley was sort of the grandfather of psychedelics and everything. And he, Ram Dass was hanging out with him, and all he'd do is walk around going, "Oh, how wonderful! Oh, everything was just wonderful." There was no concept of good or bad there. It was just, "Oh, this has happened. It's raining while we're at the beach. How wonderful!" There's, I think that's only a lot of what we talk about is good in theory, and we always need to keep in mind people's capacity. So we don't want to create these expectations that they should be doing this because, if someone's ego is very conditioned to being in the driver's seat, it looks at the world through that black and white lens and distorted view of things. And when it doesn't get what it wants, or it's not living in utopia, or people aren't praising it and sharing it with love and affection, then it gets really angsty, and that's where it's determines that that's bad. And when it's aligned with the ego's desires, then that's good. But so you've got to not transcend your ego. You've got to, I guess, develop a healthy ego that's not so doesn't get so activated, and we have to be in the driver's seat consciously, mindfully, deliberately, intentionally, purposefully, And when we're in the driver's seat and in the present moment, that's where we get to choose, Viktor Frankl again, how we respond. And yeah, we can have simultaneous experiences at once. We can feel deeply sad about 9/11 or a tragedy, but we can underneath that maintain this sense of, but something's gonna come from this, as you were saying earlier. So we can't close off or close around this thing and just make a determination that this is bad, because every cloud has a silver lining, but a lot of people like to find the dark cloud instead of the silver lining. So
Yeah, yeah, totally agreed. I like what you said as well about because we can, read books, listen to podcasts, and we'll hear concepts, whether it's spiritual stuff or just, trying to work on ourselves and be in a better place. And it all sounds wonderful. And it's like, if you just, yeah, transcend your ego, like stop listening to it, be in a place of objectivity, don't have any expectations. It sounds really nice, but then we can kind of close the book and then try and apply it to our real life and realize that it's way harder than what the book said.
it's
You
like
read, you
I
read,
just
you read Eckhart Tolle and you're like, oh, I'm going to finish this book and be present 100% of the time. Then you close the book and something pisses you off after about 10 seconds. And then you go,
you get pissed off that you finished the book.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love this. I was getting so much out of it. I can't believe it's
I wish it
finished.
kept going.
It's like all right. All you have to do with golf is go out and shoot a birdie on every hole, and you shoot at oh, great, let me at it. And then you walk off shooting 130, and you're like, what? Why? Why didn't that happen? Well, have you trained? Have you been taught? Have you learned? Have you got all the reps in? You know,
It's
have you
messy.
turned up?
It's
Yeah. Well,
messier
it's
than what we would like it to be.
it's and we in working with clients, we obviously talk about this because we need to be based in the reality of what is. And one of the philosophy we use for that is it's simple to be happy, but it's difficult to be simple. So it's simple to be happy, don't have attachments,
Mm.
but it's difficult to be simple because it's good in theory, but theory doesn't have an ego and kids and partners and financial pressures and conditioning and DNA and all that sort of. So we're up against it. So it's really important for people to go, what's my capacity, and if my capacity isn't conducive to me being able to keep a balanced perspective on things, then that's where I need to dedicate some time and energy to,
Yeah.
instead of just wishing or wanting or hoping that it's magically going to occur.
Yeah, and you brought up, conditioning, and we're going to talk about the unconscious today and the subconscious. And, oftentimes nearly all the time when we're doing this kind of work, we're working against that subconscious conditioning. So we've approached ourselves and the world in a certain way throughout the majority of our life, and it has become very much a subconscious program running beneath the surface of conscious awareness. And so that takes a bit of time and a bit of effort to rewire the neural pathways in our brain and our body to be able to look at things differently. Because if I've automatically reacted to a certain situation with anger or, running away or whatever it is, then that's going to be my automatic reaction. I have to consciously take the reins whenever something like that happens. And, that uses up energy, where to give people a bit of a breakdown about how the subconscious works is that our brain takes up a huge amount of energy of our body. It's only less than 5%, I think, of the mass, but takes up something like 35 or 40% of the energy of the overall system. And it would take up way more if we didn't have subconscious programming. And so we learn things when we grow up, like when we're babies until the age of, I think it's like 3, 4, or 5, are in what's called a delta brainwave, which is basically a sleeping kind of brainwave or really deep hypnosis. They're then in a theta brainwave the most of the time, up until like maybe 8 to 10. And
And
so,
that's a very suggestible state.
yeah, so it's really suggestible. And so we pick up all of these programs and beliefs and ideas about the world and where we fit into it and how we have to act. And not only that, but also just physical things, like walking and opening doors and jumping and all that. Like I've noticed with Tommy, whenever he has a growth spurt, I'll notice he falls over more when he's running around. It's like your body has to get used to the new dimensions of your actual body until it's sort
Yeah.
of it gets that subconscious program locked in and go, okay, I'm this big and my legs working this way, and you'll stop falling over. And so we do that because, our body has to conserve energy because otherwise the brain will take up too much. And so we have all these programs like a computer running in the background. And we've probably used this analogy many times on the show, but when clients come in to see myself or Nick, it's like having them realize that a lot of the software that you're running is, Windows 95, Windows 3.1 kind of thing. It's like,
We get a dial-up connection.
we've got a dial-up connection. Someone's using the phone and disconnected you from the internet. It's like, no, man, up the phone. I've got this. Oh, no, I won't go there. I won't go there. And so you have to make people aware that, hey, this program that you're running here, or these 5 programs, are that of a child, and you're here trying to adult. And if we don't look at these programs, see them for what they are, and start to change them, then you're going to continue acting like a child in these scenarios.
So when we unpack the three toxic beliefs, we sort of reveal to clients that it's all about the ego because it's I. It's very rigid, which is must, and mental health. Sign of mental health is someone's ability to be adaptive. It's flexibility, and same with physical health. And then the last one is it's irrational because it's no one's universally loved and liked. No one always gets what they want. No one lives in utopia. So those three things collectively come together to equal an immaturity. And we say exactly what you just said. It's so many adults are trying to hold down adult jobs and be adult relationships and have adult responsibilities and be adult role models, but they keep regressing back to this very immature operating system and start having their adult tantrums because they're not getting what they want. And it's hilarious just watching. But it's hilarious and sad watching these grown people regress to just to this. I don't know. They just stop adulting. They're just not present. They're not conscious. They're not in the driver's seat. They're not choosing what they're saying. It's just on that. That's autopilot kicks in.
And that can then trigger, whether it's a partner or a co-worker or whatever, that can like trigger their regression. And then you've
Yeah,
got like a couple of kids having a tantrum, but they're in these adult bodies and have better vocabulary, maybe, and can articulate themselves, but it's just a tantrum at the end of the
well,
day.
they just use better swear words, I think.
Yeah.
But they it's like ego activates ego, and I posted a video on Instagram the other day of a bloke walking down the street with an alpaca, I think, and someone filming is like, "Oh, that's a big dog, mate," just trying to make a joke of it, and the bloke's like, "Not a fucking dog, it's an alpaca or something," and then the bloke holding the camera took a real interesting turn. He's like, "Fuck off, you fucking idiot!" and
Mm.
just turned it. The whole thing just turned on a dime, and they were just going at each other, and I was just, I just felt so sad for them because it was just this unnecessary suffering, this unnecessary exchange. And that's their capacity. They don't. This is when we talk about capacity. I'm referring to emotional intelligence. That they've got no self-awareness to then self-manage and self-regulate, and then so they're not okay. So they're not in a position to observe the other person. How are you doing? And then manage that relationship. Oh, okay. Sorry, mate. You're not in the mood for a joke. All right. Have a nice day. I'll see you later. That would be a very healthy exchange, but it takes a trained person, I suppose, to do that.
To not get caught up in it, not get taken away by their own
Yeah,
internal reaction.
and being conscious that the unconscious is trying to take over.
Yeah. Yeah. And so inside the unconscious, we have all of the experiences that we've been through in our life and a lot of the beliefs that we hold. And we can have, very positive beliefs and things about our place in the world, but, we can also have really limiting ones that tell a story of deficiency. And, so many people that I work with, that come in, we find out that they have these beliefs that, I'm not enough. I'm not worthy of love. I don't deserve to be happy. I don't trust, other people. I don't trust myself. all of this kind of stuff, which, our subconscious, the reason we hold a lot of these programs is because we want to survive in our environment, and so a lot of these programs are great for the survival of the human being, but they're not conducive to happiness, health, and prosperity and all that stuff.
Or that they worked for a period of time where there were real threats, in times of trauma or whatever. But we moved pretty quickly physically out of those times, but mentally or psychologically, we still perceive that we're in danger, and there are these threats. So the ego is like a bodyguard, and it's going to perceive all these threats, and it's going to go on the defense, and it's going to attack, or it's going to keep you safe by disabling you physically, as it did with me when I couldn't leave the house. It's a very clever system, and once you sit there and observe it and sort of understand how we work and operate, then we can go, oh, the ego isn't bad, or I'm not an idiot for still doing that, or there's no aversion to it. There's no destructive relationship to it. We're not reactive to ourselves. We're actually in a deeper state of love because we've cultivated this understanding of how it is that we actually operate. And then we're in this beautiful position where we can go, oh, well, that's not working for me. Oh, that's a model that I used when I got assaulted when I was 15, or that's from mum and dad yelling at me, or that's from that teacher that said, and we can start plucking all of these weeds out of our garden,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden we start experiencing peace, and that's that's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, it's great. Like I always do that with clients. We'll thank that part, or whether you would call it the part of the ego or
Yeah,
whatever, because it's like,
yeah,
we can have an instance where, let's say, I don't trust other people, or, it might be one of the two sexes, but it's like something happened in your life where this one person or these few people couldn't be trusted. You were betrayed, you were hurt, maybe you were abused. And so then that gets locked away in the subconscious as a generalization, is that these like people can't be trusted. Whereas men, women, or just everyone can't be, and that gets locked away. It's in the filing cabinet and it's always there. And it's adaptive, like you said, it's adaptive in the moment or in the short term, but then it becomes maladaptive because, 20 years later, this person might be around all these people that they can trust and they consciously want to trust, but subconsciously that file just keeps getting brought out and saying, don't trust, don't trust, don't trust. And so once we can see that, we can thank that part and go, man, that part was in there and it got filed in that way because I was in an unsafe environment and I needed to survive and get through that. So thank you. But then from that place of awareness and presence and consciousness, we can say, okay, maybe I don't need that file anymore. Maybe I'm not in that environment anymore and I want to trust. And that's where we get a conscious and subconscious split, because the conscious mind wants something, the subconscious mind says not safe. And in that split, it's very difficult, if not straight away, the subconscious program will eventually probably win or sabotage that situation.
I heard when I was first training as a practitioner that the subconscious is 96% of what we do comes from the subconscious and 4% is conscious, which is a massive disparity. Imagine 94 kilo person fighting a 4 kilo person, or
Yeah, that's a
96
good
kilo
one.
person fighting a 4 kilo person. It's going to overpower it with such ease. And that split you're talking about, we talk about that a lot. It's out of alignment. The conscious and the subconscious are not aligned, and so the conscious mind has all these desires to go out to visit friends, but the subconscious is like the heavyweight going, not today, buddy. And that just compounds it. That just exacerbates things, because then we start getting frustrated. Then we start getting depressed that we can't go out. And then we start doubting ourselves of, why am I like this? Why can't I do it? I'm such an idiot. Then we turn on ourselves, which is just, as I said, it's just compounding and compounding and compounding. It's not until you come and sit with someone who has been taught or trained or learned how we operate that it can then be revealed to you, and you can experience that gratitude for these parts, instead of looking at that part of you as a of just. I've had clients, and I've said, if this, your ego was sitting next to you, or if this part of you was sitting next to you, if this younger version of you walked into the room, what would you do? What would your reaction be? And they're like, oh, I'd stab it, I'd beat it up, I'd set it on fire, I'd blow it up, and I'm like, okay, and now stop and listen to how you're speaking about another part of you and realize the amount of conflict that you're in within yourself, and you want to have peace in your relationships, and you want to feel happy and light and all this stuff, but you're carrying around this notion of conflict. I'm not sure how that's going to work out for you.
Well, it's like I think I want to just accept and love myself, and from that place interact with the world. Then I go, but not this part of myself. I want to burn that part at the stake. I fucking hate that bit. So
If I could just get rid of that, I'm like, oh well, then you're not whole.
no,
Then you are going to be deficient. I love Ram Dass's way of talking about, when someone goes, oh, I am unlovable. A typical therapist reply would be, no, you are lovable. And yeah, that's great, but that's only half of the work for me, from my understanding, because a person's just stuck in this I am unlovable, and then we can work with them to get to I am lovable, but that just creates a spectrum, that creates a polarity. And then Ram Dass offers to get beyond that, to go to I am. And some people will love me, and some people won't love me. And sometimes I'll be a dick and do silly things, and sometimes I'll turn up and be the most awesome person, and everything in between. So it's getting it's escaping that polarity and getting out of and getting away from the ego. I am lovable. Or it's no, you're this whole entire thing, and you're capable of all sorts. And if you have a healthy and current updated operating system, you are going to function properly. It's no different to an iPhone. So many people get angry at their phones. Oh, it's not working. When was the last time you updated it? No, I don't believe in that shit. They're trying to get you. Okay, all right. Well, you can keep banging your phone and smashing it, or you can update it, and then it's going to function as you want it to function. So many people are dysfunctional because they're dysregulated and distorted, and they're not functioning within themselves, and they're not functioning within their relationships and within the world, and they can't see it. So when we're talking about change, it's going to be brought to a conscious a level of conscious awareness that the way I'm operating is not conducive to feeling happy and being healthy. So I've got to go and do something about this.
yeah, I love that. And what you're speaking about there is like transcending the duality, I guess. It's like I'm not enough. And it's like, well, I can tell myself I'm enough over and over again, but what's the actual truth? It's like in some situations I'm good enough, in some situations I'm not. That holds no bearing around my, I guess, feeling as a human being, but that's just the
It's not
reality.
that my value or my worth or anything. It's
That's right. That's
and,
just
and and it's that balanced perspective. It's transcending the duality. Things can then be you're operating on these simultaneous levels. It's both a tragedy and an opportunity. It's sad, but at peace with it. We can have these simultaneous experiences when we escape those traps.
yeah, yeah. We call it in the work we do and what we teach cohabitation, where, often when people come in and they've got so much emotional baggage going on and they get kind of lost in sadness or grief or anger or whatever it is. And so we create, a resource, something where that can help them. We have practice to help them feel safe or just be free of that emotional disturbance for a moment. And sometimes we will then pendulate between what does the sadness feel like and let's come back here. And then over time, when they get really skilled at it, they can get to a point where they can cohabit, where it's like something may be really, really sad, but there's also another part of them kind of holding that and going, but that's okay. So I'm sad, but I'm
Mm.
also okay. Whereas before, when I was just lost in the sadness, I was sad and that wasn't okay. And I'm just in a spiral at that point.
So our version of that is necessary and unnecessary suffering.
Yeah.
So because we're trying to teach people how to have an appropriate response, which is in proportion to what they're experiencing. So it's appropriate to feel sad in this moment. So, but a lot of people have an aversion because the unconscious programming and it's when people say, "Oh, kids are like sponges," yes, they are because they're so suggestible, and they get taught that feeling sad or feeling angry or feeling guilty or ashamed or feeling um, worried or concerned, anxiety, depression, they're bad or negative emotions because we're in that duality. They're good or they're bad, or it's that binary thinking around it. And so when they feel sad, that subconscious programmer kicks in and goes, "Oh, and it's bad to feel sad. It's you shouldn't feel sad. You're a pussy, or you're weak for feeling sad, or whatever the programming is." And so we get sad about feeling sad, or we get angry about feeling angry, or anxious about feeling anxious, and you really get stuck and trapped in that. So learning to move through necessary suffering with grace and taking care of yourself, and then understanding when you're creating unnecessary suffering and doing the work to let go of those attachments or desires for things to be different, because it's just you're not in reality. You're in this reality of what would, could, or should ideally or potentially or preferably be happening, which is just an illusion.
It is. And you can also, if you're listening to this and maybe you heard some of those subconscious beliefs and you're like, oh yeah, that maybe sounds like me, you can watch out for it, because these subconscious beliefs, they're their own little entity happening in our subconscious mind. And they, like anything else in existence, they want to keep existing, and they will look for evidence that what they believe is correct. And that creates this, I guess, kind of a negative loop. And so, if I think, people can't be trusted or people will betray you, then you'll notice I might be watching a TV show and someone, trusts someone, and I'm like, oh, I shouldn't trust them. And then when it turns out they got betrayed, I'm like, I knew it. And you
Yeah,
can feel this,
told you.
I knew it, yeah, and so you can feel that, maybe,
The ego's validating itself.
yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
So pay attention to that in your life, and you'll really uncover where some of these beliefs that you might have, because they want to see evidence that they're correct. They want confirmation bias, and when they get it, there's that little, yeah, I knew that kind of thing. And so that unfortunately reinforces the belief, because then we're looking out for these limiting beliefs to be correct, and we'll find them. It's like, let's say I think people are cruel and mean. And then if I'm looking for cruel or mean people, I'll find it, because there's cruel and mean people in existence. There's also kind, loving, amazing people as well. But if I'm blind to them, then I'm not going to see them. And my belief is just going to get confirmed on the more limiting or negative side.
Yeah, it's called a negative bias, but there's also a positive bias as well, and we can go around looking at all the wonderful things that are occurring in the world, and so ultimately, our beliefs create our perception. Our perception creates our reality, and we become what we tell ourselves we are. Or the world is what we determine it to be, and so this is how powerful we are. This is why it's hilarious how many people are just walking around with an untrained mind and expecting to be happy. It's like, this thing is fucking powerful, and if you don't understand that, and you don't start teaching it and training it and working with it, then it's just going to run off and make a mess of things most of the time.
Yeah.
So,
It's like, the old school psychotherapy. Remember the ink blot tests? I think they
oh
call it a
yeah,
Rorschach test or whatever they're called.
yeah,
And it's like you show
yeah.
someone this and go, what do you see? And then someone goes, oh, it's a butterfly. Then another person sees the same picture and goes, that's mum and dad fighting. Or, oh, that's someone
Oh, it's
getting
a
bullied at
vagina.
school or
All right, well
vagina.
you're a pervert then. You're a sicko.
So,
That's what
so
they did.
but the whole world is essentially a Rorschach test, in that there's
Yeah.
some sort of objective reality out there that none of us know because we're having a subjective experience. And that's coming in through our senses and getting filtered through our subconscious, our beliefs and our ideas about ourselves and the world. And then we're seeing that and then claiming that that's objective reality and arguing with people. Whereas, you might be tuning in for the first time today and you're about to turn off because just I shit you, I annoy you. I was going to use you, Nick, but I'm like, I'll go easy on you. But maybe it's me, right? But then, I mean, you could have a subconscious program in there that your uncle who was a dickhead to you wore a white shirt all the time and kind of spoke like me. And, you might be aware of that. You just think, oh, I'm a dickhead. The truth is, I'm not a dickhead or a dickhead. I'm just this thing just talking at the minute. But we have all these ideas based on our past experiences, and that that forms our opinions much more than we like to think. We think our conscious will and interpretation of the moment is how we're perceiving, but it's just not.
that's not, you're right. I'm looking for this quote because I want to make sure I get it correct. I am not who you think I am. You are what you think I am.
Yeah, exactly
So,
what we're talking about.
how many people feel misunderstood by their partners or by the world or whatever? And it's like, how do you not get me? And because the person isn't seeing you A, as you see yourself, or B, as you are, they're seeing their interpretation of you. Their subconscious filtering system is kicking in, and they're looking at you through, all of these distorted lenses, and that's where we create disconnect, and we just feel so separated, and that sense of belonging is compromised, and that's where people really shut down and spiral and isolate and get stuck because it's just like everyone's misinterpreted. They're sitting here going, "But I'm a good person." I had it a lot when I was a kid. I was probably too thoughtful, I suppose, at times. I was a bit out of balance, but I do these things for people, and they'd be like, "Oh, that's just weird." I'm like, "What do you mean it's weird? I'm just doing something for you." With hindsight, it was coming. I think they interpreted it as weird because it was coming from a sense of deficiency within me. It wasn't a healthy or authentic sort of act. It was maybe if I do this, then they will give me something in return. It was a bit transactional. So I
Mm.
think having that driving force behind it created this weird energy which they subconsciously picked up on and was like, oh, I don't find that attractive, even though the surface level gesture was, I don't know, buying flowers for someone or something. Their interpretation of it, and this is, we can get into intuition now and instinct and all that sort of stuff, but that's all kicking in on that deeper level as well. So conscious mind's trying to map the world, and the unconscious mind's just working really hard behind the scenes to figure out all the nuances. Like when you're talking to someone, you're not consciously going, "Oh, their eye just twitched," or that facial muscle just moved. It's all that unconscious mind is there because we don't have enough brain power or time. Imagine if you had to consciously think of every movement that you
Yeah,
made.
every blink,
You'd get no, have to blink, have to breathe.
I've got a blink.
We'd all die. You're trying to do too much at once. So that subconscious mind is constantly drinking in all of the stimulus and information that the conscious mind's not aware of. So once again, it's really important to empty the net out. It's like trawling through the ocean. You gotta empty the net out.
Yeah, we've got, I mean, we're talking about our personal experience and the subconscious programs that have been laid. And then we also have a collective unconscious, like there's an unconscious of just human beings in general. Like we carry stuff through our genes in our DNA. We're also born into what I would call a cultural unconscious, based on where we're born in the world and the culture that we're in. And it's all really interesting because we all just we pick this stuff up like, like genes, like, there was a test done on rats or rabbits, one of the two, but they were just testing the genetic imprints of trauma and that kind of thing. And they took these rats and they traumatized them by electrically shocking them on the feet. Not very nice for the rats, was it? Pretty rough. The collective unconscious of rats and mice, like Jesus Christ, they got some shit going on in there. And they created a basic association because they would spray cherry blossom spray in the cage whenever they shocked them on the feet. So after a few times, the basic association says, I don't have to shock them anymore. If I spray cherry blossom spray, then they'll run to the corner of the cage in an anxious response, expecting to be hurt. They never shocked those rats again, and the rats grew up and they had baby rats, and those rats had baby rats. They separated the babies from the mother when they were an hour old. Like once again, terrible. But anyway, when those rats grow up, the offspring, they would spray the cherry blossom spray, and they would have this massive response where they'd run to the corner of the cage, anxious. Without they'd never been shocked on the feet. These rats. So us humans
Mm.
get this as well. All of this stuff, gets passed down. I mean, all of the to a degree, all the violence, the things that human beings have done, the racism, the segregation, all of this, and so we're carrying that in there too, as well as the soup. And like the cultural soup's an interesting one because I can walk down the streets of Delhi and see people, eating dog on the side of the road, and I'd be absolutely horrified, and I'd tell them they were wrong. Yet that person could come to my house and see me eating cow, which is a beef, a sacred animal to them, and they'd call me a savage and tell me I was wrong. And we can sit there pointing a finger at each other, but the truth is we're just born into a different cultural soup with different beliefs and a different subconscious.
And you put the cult in cultural.
Thank you.
There's something else in there that you touched on. I was really hanging. I've held on to that for about 2 minutes while I was listening to you, and then something else came up, and I'm like, I prioritized it now. I've got to hit him with this one first. So,
Uh,
um,
So there's different, there's the collective soup, cultural soup. There's our present day
ah,
experiences.
the when there's trauma, it's like an imprint on our subconscious, and it's such a deep imprint um, that we do hand it down. Like it alters us. I think it probably. I don't think science has been able to figure it out. They've figured out DNA and everything, but I don't know if they can fully understand the psychological DNA, if you will, that we hand down. But we refer to it as emotional family heirlooms. I've got this necklace. I'm gonna give it to my daughter for her 21st birthday or whatever. It's like, oh, I've got this trauma imprint. I'm unconsciously going to hand this down to my kids as soon as they're born. And people have referred to it as breaking the chain or whatever. But it's if you once again awareness, being conscious of it is the first step to change. So we've got to understand that this stuff exists before we can then um, gently attend to it, instead of being in conflict with it or think it shouldn't be happening or it's fucked that it's here or blaming our parents for not doing their work around it. It's like, oh, this is here. And that's it. That's reality. Reality is I've been given this gift. All right, it's more like a dog shit in a paper bag sort of gift, but it's still a gift, and it's my gift, and I get to choose to not attend to it because can't be asked or it's too hard or whatever, and I'm going to keep handing it down, or I can sit here and deal with it, and everyone's going to benefit from that.
Yeah, yeah. I always tell clients, I'm like, you get the opportunity to be the one. I'm like, I think it gets presented to the one who's strong enough and game enough to break that. Because some people they find out, that obviously their past and their subconscious programming a lot of the times from their childhood when they're in that imprinting phase has caused a lot of their dysfunction. And then we immediately want to blame mum and dad or other people. But if we really look into it, we'll see that, that's oftentimes been passed down from their parents and possibly their parents. And it's this like cloud that's been going over the generations moving forward. And we can have compassion and empathy for that. But then it's up to us to say, well, do I want to carry this forward to my kids or not? And that's
But
that's really important.
it brings a quote by Seneca, I think it was, into play that if you believe you have been harmed, then you have been harmed. Therefore, your mind is complicit in your suffering. So there is trauma, there are traumatic events. But then, a 4-year-old child can form a belief that daddy doesn't love me because daddy's never home. And that's the child's view of the world. It's a child's perspective, and the child's applying meaning to it and making this determination, which is then going and that means this, and so the child traumatizes itself.
Mm.
Where the dad if you press pause and get into the dad's experience, the dad's like, "Oh, I love this kid so much. I'm just gonna do everything I can to make sure it has everything it needs, and it's got food, water, shelter. It's got all these opportunities. It's going to go to the best school." So the dad's just in this
It'll have all
state
the
of love.
opportunities that I didn't have because I want a better life for
Yeah,
them. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but not even that. Just I love this kid so much. I'm just going to do everything I can for it. And so the dad's got that going. The child's sitting there going, having the very opposite experience, going, "Well, I'm going to determine that you don't love me because kids spell love Time, not Toys." So the kid's going, "All I need is you home and around me, and then I will feel loved. I will feel that sense of belonging and connection." All the while the parents are going, "No, I've got to provide all these opportunities and make sure you go to the best schools and so you can have the best job and be rich and have a big house and everything." So yeah, it's fascinating who determines what trauma is, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So sometimes I have to get clients to try and acknowledge because we grow up as adults and now we're trying to look at our past, but we're looking at it through our adult eyes. And so, a client might say, if we're using that scenario, they might say, yeah, it was all right. And then your dad was working all the time. He wasn't around much and blah, blah. And then I'm like, oh, what did that, feel like for you? He goes, oh, I thought it was sad, but he had to do it because we had this house and mortgage and, we didn't have much money to start with. And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
no, we need to actually go back to
Yeah.
that
I don't
four-year-old
want to know
you
what you think. I want to know what that 4-year-old thinks.
because we've developed this rational analytical mind who can now
Mm.
look back at those things rationally. But I mean, oftentimes that neglects a lot of emotion that we felt at the time. So having part of seeing the truth and moving on from it is being able to see how we actually felt at that time. And if we felt unloved and lonely and like dad didn't care about us, we need to see that and acknowledge it before we can then move on.
Yeah, and my clients will know themselves better than I ever will. So I think I reached a point where I realized I was working harder than my clients. I don't know if I became lazy or what, but now I get them to do all the work, and I'm just like, all right, close your eyes and let's go in there, blah blah blah. And now go and find that young version of yourself and help them to be free. It's just like because you've got the conscious awareness, you can see that you can rationalize it, but you can rationalize it to that young version of you, and just see how you go with that. And then if you need some help, just yell out. And so often it's amazing the results people get because they go and meet their inner child or their young self and they're like, "Hey, I get that you're feeling the way you're feeling. It makes sense, but this is the reality of what was actually occurring at the time. So here's a bit of an update. Let's update that file that you've been carrying around for 35 years because it's sort of having a ripple effect up through the ranks. And I'm trying to achieve this, but I've still got this sort of blockage in place. I've got this firewall there, and I kind of need to get
I
through
keep
it. So
feeling like no one will love me and accept me. And I'm really, it's really having an effect
and,
on us.
any chance you can drop that firewall, please? Because we were loved. We genuinely were. Oh, okay, right, yeah. Oh, we're funny creatures.
Yeah, we are. But we have to see it and laugh at it before we can do anything about it. And so right now, I think the big thing for the listeners is just keep an eye out for these little programs and beliefs that are coming up and start to understand them and be present for them and don't want them to go away or burn them at the stake. And once you can start to see it, you can start to make change. And whether you consciously take the reins and start change, or if you work with a practitioner, you can then go to the practitioner and go, here's what I've noticed in my day-to-day life. I feel like people are going to betray me and it can't be trusted. And I've been really staying present with it and thinking about it. It reminds me a lot of this thing that happened to me when I was 12. And all of a sudden now you're starting to make steps to be free from it. But it can take a bit of time.
Or just register or recognize that you feel stuck. You're not feeling empowered. You're not free to think and do and um, decide as you would like to. You can register that there are these firewalls. There's these limiting beliefs in place. There's something holding me back on some level, and I don't know what it is or what to do with it or anything. But I'm going to go and sit with someone who does and get them to have a look under the bonnet.
And we've all got them. Like, you're not alone. Like, you might look at someone, and let's say that someone's limit or their ceilings, I don't know, money. And you see someone with all this money and you're like, oh yeah, I want to be free from that. But you're really good in relationship or somewhere else or socially, and that person with all the money have all their limiting beliefs and ceilings to do with that part of life. So we've all got it
Are you
going on at
telling us
different
we can't
ends.
be perfect? We can't, we're always, what is this
Always,
horrendous notion?
always strive to be perfect in every situation. And if you're not, then you're a piece of shit.
You're the best therapist I've ever sat with. um, where was I going to go?
Where are we gonna go?
No, that's gone. It'll come back around. Um, oh, that's so. As you said, we've all got it. My 4-year-old self, not my inner child. Um, it wasn't dad was at work and doesn't love me. It was dad is being physically violent and doesn't love me. So there was probably merits to what that 4-year-old was thinking at the time. But it wasn't until I was 30 and I sat and really connected with the ripple effect that the holding on to that for 26 years was having on that 30-year-old version of me, that I could go back and do the work around it. And because you've got this objectivity now, because you've got this ability to just observe objectively, or I did at the time, um, and I can take me out of the equation. I can stop being this victim and dad did this to me, because that's a real victim mentality. And you get into this interesting position where you're like, I wonder what dad had going on. And then you start, and it's not to, people are very interesting when they go, oh, but you can't justify it, you can't
Mm.
excuse that, you can't. And I'm like, I'm not. If you're taking it that way, then you've got to go and do some more work, because I'm actually coming into a deep understanding. I'm sitting in my heart, not in my ego, and I'm observing this person without an agenda, and going, what did they really have going on? And undiagnosed manic depression or bipolar disorder, and medicating with drugs and alcohol, and very toxic friends. There's a lot of contributing factors there, and then you go and collect more evidence. You stop collecting the negative bias, or all that evidence to support your trauma beliefs, and you go and start collecting other evidence, and you hear from random people, oh, your dad really loved you. Oh, your dad had a shrine to you and your sister. Oh, your dad was really struggling because he couldn't express, how much he loved you guys, because of the way that his brain was wired, which, wasn't his fault. That was the way he was born. And you start collecting all this other evidence, and all of a sudden there's this wonderful moment where you're like, oh, I no longer had a bad childhood. I no longer had a traumatic childhood. I no longer had a monster of a father. I had a childhood, and I had a role model or a parent that was really stuck and struggling with a lot. And yes, it had a ripple effect, and affected that version of me to some degree. But that's such a relief, and that's updating that operating system.
Yeah, it's so important what you said because I've seen the same thing. It's like you try and understand what your dad was going through, and then so many people just jump straight to this other end of the spectrum where it's like, oh, well, you condone dads hitting their kids. It's like, no, like, well, I did this.
No,
I did like,
you're deciding that I'm
that's
saying that.
right, that's right. Yeah, I couldn't. A couple of years ago, I was speaking now, to practitioners and therapists, and a lot of the practitioners and therapists have been through their own, trauma and stuff. But I was talking about, narcissists and people who've convicted crimes and that kind of thing, and how it's so important that we understand the drivers and what they've been through and what they're going through and understand them for the sole purpose of we want to prevent this in the future. We want to prevent domestic violence and people with narcissistic disorder and all that. And then all it was with 90% of people are just like, I can't believe you're supporting these people and I can't believe that you approve of domestic violence. I'm like, the whole point of this was literally how do we prevent domestic violence in the future? But people, this is a subconscious reaction. This is the whole
Mm,
idea of this
mm,
podcast. They can't get past it. And the brain just goes, no, we can't accept that. And so even though
yeah.
that's not what we're saying, it's very hard to stop that kind of reaction or response.
I had the same thing at a corporate workshop I was doing, and I was people were in a meditation, so they're in a, I'd say they're more in a deep alpha state maybe, and I was just talking about the Buddha and reached enlightenment when he saw things as they were, without applying these mental constructs upon it all, and distorting the reality. And he saw a leaf falling from a tree, and a child being born, and a woman getting beaten, and he saw all of that as it was. And this woman started. She opened her eyes and started having a bit of a reaction, and she said, "I can't believe the Buddha was fine with women getting beaten." And I was like, "Wow, that's such an interesting interpretation." And I'd recorded on my iPad, and we discussed it the next day, and I played her back the recording, and she was shocked. She's like, "Oh wow, the contrast between reality of what was said and then her distorted reality from unhealed trauma was massive." And
It's great that you
yeah.
recorded it. That's so interesting. Because in that moment, something gets stimulated inside and the body gets flooded with all of that imprint. And then all of a sudden that Rorschach test becomes pretty interesting, and we can fly off the handle.
Oh, so yeah, but it was such a, once again, the balanced approach. It was uncomfortable or unpleasant for her, but it was also a wonderful opportunity that it came to the surface as it did, and we got to do the work around it the next day, and you know, and so we removed some of that old programming and that old wiring, and put some clean, healthy things in place. And now she could see that if a woman is beaten, then they can go and study and learn martial arts and open up a school to teach other women. And so many women cannot experience violence because this one woman did. It's simultaneously horrible, but also wonderful, and that can be a bridge too far for people to reach. That their minds can't grasp that because they're so conditioned to only going, "This is bad"
Yeah, and
or
I
"This is
think
good."
it's what we're a lot of what we're talking about is if we can how that lady, obviously there was a day in between when that happened, and then you had her listen to the recording, and she was like, "Oh wow, that's so interesting." And it's like, what if we could collapse that? And so whenever we have these reactions, we can have the reaction and then just immediately go, "Oh, what's
Mm.
this? This something's been stimulated inside of me." And so now we're kind of out of the reaction, even though something may be happening still internally, but now there's another part of us watching the reaction, which is a much more beneficial place to be.
Yeah, we call that a mental rep. So catch whatever's going on and then make a determination. Is this necessary or unnecessary suffering? Ryan's just
I feel jacked.
displaying
I got a good pump after that one. Oh,
you just
vascular brain.
Ryan's just flexing his guns
I'll
for
go have a
those that
post workout shake after that. Protein in
think
me.
you're definitely going to go and have a shake. Um,
It's more than one,
what
mate.
was I go? So as a mentor, yeah, you got to catch, and then assess whether it's necessary or
You had
unnecessary
to do a
suffering.
mental rep to get back to your mental rep
I did.
story.
If it's necessary suffering, we let it in, we let it out, let it do its job. If it's unnecessary suffering, then we're going to do the work around it, and we're going to get back into that space between stimulus and response, and go, wow, this was a big reaction. This was a really noticeable shift within me, and I've got to be very gentle with myself right now. I'm in suffering. I've got to really take care of myself right now, because if I don't, if I let this carry on, then we don't like being in suffering. We don't like having this stuff in our system. So we get it out of our system by expressing it and projecting it onto the world around us, which people don't enjoy. So really important to start identifying when you are getting triggered, whether it's a trauma trigger or an ego trigger. There's different triggers, and going, oh right, I've got to sit with this. This is more about me than it says about whatever the source of stimulus is.
Beautiful, Nico. That's it. Let's wrap it up
Happy
there.
birthday, buddy. Happy birthday,
Thank
Hassan.
you.
That's
Thank you.
what did you do? Like, what did your beautiful wife and
I
do
just
for you last night
oh, that's
for your
just turning
birthday?
31, it's not a big birthday.
31.
Yeah, 31.
31
Yeah,
or
just
41,
it's
maybe.
31. And what's the difference, a decade here or there. And no, it was a
Yeah,
quiet one. No, yeah, Melissa and my son Tommy forgot my birthday. So but
ah, nice.
I play it down. I'm not a big birthday guy. I don't like presents. Not that I don't like presents. I'm very indifferent about presents. So it's not a
Did you
big.
believe you have been harmed, or did you take it personally when she didn't
No,
remember
I
your
thought
birthday? You should have.
I could. The longer it went, the more giggly I was because I'm like, when she finds out, she's gonna flip, and she did.
And then I rang you and said happy birthday and asked you to go and tell
Yeah.
her. And she gave you, what did you say? Nick's rang me because she's remembered my birthday. So
Yes,
we poked the bear a bit and she bit
she
appropriately
did.
with the
She
look
did.
she gave you.
Yes, yes. So no, good
Oh,
birthday, mate.
wonderful.
Happy with that. Another year around the sun, and yeah, just grateful to be here.
Awesome. Well, um, great to have you back. And yeah, we'll go again this time, another time.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode. Bye bye.